right. It's great to be back, Slush. Thanks for having us. You know, Slush is very much known for bringing Europe's greatest founders on stage. You'd seen them all already today on day one, and you'll see more of them on day two. But what is a little bit more difficult to do on Slush is bringing someone on stage that's a hidden gem that kind of sits right next to Anton from Lovable, all of these guys. Manny, you know, you've been building paid outreach in the US to like more than 250 million in revenue. And then you've actually moved to London a year ago.
Yep.
And you're building paid here now. So how's Europe treating you so far?
It's been an amazing welcoming. I think that I tell everyone that Europe is a cheat because building a company in Europe is actually easier than doing it in the Bay. And if you know how to sell in the US, you're golden. Like you're truly made. So yeah, it's been amazing.
And it's your first time in Finland, right?
My first time in Finland.
You don't even, own a winter jacket. You've told me yesterday, right?
What's that?
You don't even own a puffer jacket or winter jacket,
I don't, because
right?
it doesn't get that cold in London. So like it gets cold for like a week. So I'm not gonna buy a big puffy jacket. And yesterday I went for a walk to the restaurant, and it was proper cold. So Finland is not playing with the cold here.
So I guess we have to warm up from the inside.
That's right.
Is then.
So following Chris Sakas, cheers to you all.
Cheers.
5 o'clock.
Before we do more drinks here on stage and get actually banned, let's also talk a bit about, your outreach years.
Yes.
Take us back. You started that company in 2014.
Correct.
Once you started selling, you scaled the company within 5 years to 100 million in revenue.
Yep.
What was the most contrarian thing that you did where you were right?
I did a couple of things that were not normal. So when I started outreach, I sold to individual users. Mm-hmm. And then mostly because we wanted to get product market fit quickly, and I don't know how to get product market fit other than selling and getting people to use the product. So if you cold a seller and you tell them, look, I'm gonna help you increase your pipeline and increase your win rate, and that person agrees, and you look for the price of a cappuccino per day, you can double your pipeline, and you can stop the subscription anytime. If I can get that sale done and keep that subscription going, I have a user and I have product market fit. So I did that. I don't know how many times, because we got to $2 million in the first year, mostly on the back of selling to individuals. And when you sell to an individual, like you really hone in your muscle, you know what I mean? Because that you're not selling to a company, you know what I mean? You're selling to a person, and that person remembers you. So that was the number one thing that was super contrarian. The second thing was that, I know it's trite, but we truly obsess on customer usage. So every morning, our day will be run by who was stuck in the product. So we will make a list of all our users and all the different, like you now have post-hog and a bunch of other things. We were using, not that, we were using Amplitude didn't exist then, like there is a lot of things that didn't exist, but we will use Mixpanel, dump it all in a spreadsheet, prioritize customers from lowest use to the highest use, and call them. So our entire morning we'll be calling, in the afternoon we'll be building whatever they found trouble, at night we will deploy, rinse and repeat the day after.
And you called the lowest usage customers because you were figuring out what the product wasn't great for yet.
Exactly.
Versus trying to to avoid retention. It was more about product discovery.
Exactly. It was more product discovery. It was making sure that we were, like, what is the pain that they were having, and where are we addressing that pain? Because if we were, then they would be using the product. If they weren't, then we missed. So we want to go back to make sure that we got usage out of it.
And one thing I love so much about working with you is like you're so customer and sales focused, and you're obviously a great seller yourself, but you're also obsessed very much about building the engine that or the machine that runs your startup itself, right? Yeah. And so you talk a lot about the fact that scaling sales is something that's the hardest to do, because at the end of the day, a seller has to also, be profitable for the business. Unless it earns 4 times OTE. There's no reason for you to hire. How do you figure out when it's the right time to scale sales?
I think it's literally when you, it's happening, it happened to outreach, and it happens right now, that is when you start dropping meetings, it's when you need somebody to run with the meetings. If you have the ability to generate, so the numbers kind of work out like this. So like every seller needs to have at least 3x coverage on their pipeline. And that averages to a normal semi-efficient conversion. And then every seller needs to have line of sight to deliver 4x their OTE per year on that 3x pipeline. As long as you get that running and you do for 1 and then 2 and then 3 sellers, you're ready to scale. You see what I mean? So one of the things that I'm doing differently here at Pay that I did at Outreach is at Outreach I will take anyone with a credit card and a hot breath and like I will sell them to anybody. So my ACVs are really low. And not by design, it was mostly because I didn't know what I was doing. But here, we sort of like have very narrow bands for ACV. So for instance, if somebody wants to buy the product to solve a big problem, like if a $10 million company has an insextation problem with agents and they want to buy us, the ticket to play is 100K.
Yeah.
You see what I mean? Because if the problem is not 100K worth to the customer, then it's not going to be a good use of anybody's time. If somebody's really small and they just want to get going in Slack support, we can probably lower the ACV, but like maintaining a high ACV is the secret for high efficiency sales organizations.
I guess also starting with a high ACV makes you in some form more resilient as an organization, because if you start with a low ACV and have to walk all the way up and you have to really learn how to do enterprise sales, that's also really tough.
Exactly, and then you have to get really efficient at nailing the expand in a very short period of time. So like you and I were talking about Ramp, right? And how they're worth, you guys did that $32 billion round. So like, you say that with joy, I can see that. That organization expands really quickly.
Yeah.
And that's what makes that sales cycle efficient. So you can play it on the small ACV side too, but then you have to be maniacal about expansion.
Your machine has to be very perfectly oiled.
100%. Whereas with 100K ACV, you don't have to be as precise. You know what I mean? You can be a little sloppy. Yeah. And as long as you're delivering that pipeline, you will close that deal value.
And I guess another part of the equation is people and the people that you build this with, right? So you have this quote in your outreach playbook, and it goes like, every hire either accelerates or deaccelerates your company. There's no neutral.
Correct.
I find that almost terrifying, but honestly really true.
Yeah.
How do you go about kind of figuring out if it's an accelerant or a deaccelerant, and how do you go about firing as well? There's so much being talked about hiring, but what about firing?
Look, nobody likes firing. So let's start with that. Like the whole hire slow and fire fast. Neither of those things are always true. So I hire. At Outreach, I made a huge mistake when I started delegating hiring. When I said, I need 3 headcounts, or I need 2 headcounts over here, and I said, approve, yes, it makes sense in the financial model, and so we approve. And we never got to strictly fix the profile of the hiring. There was a whole overlay of there was a whole overlay of the types of hires that we have to hire because we're in Seattle, which is not a particular hospital place for business. And now I am actually turning, and this is relatively new. There's a quote by Peter Thiel, or not a quote, but a way of doing this by Peter Thiel that is that the supply shortage right now is on exceptional people.
Yeah.
And if you decide to go find somebody exceptional the moment you have an open headcount, that's just going to take a long, long time. So the better way to do it is the moment you find somebody exceptional, just bring that person in and figure out what the job is.
Almost independent of your hiring
Almost independent of the hiring timeline. So I hate when people tell me, you need to be very disciplined about the people that you bring in. But it's just impossible to find talent that is of the caliber that you want. And so what I observe right now is that at Paid, one of the highest attributes that I put value on is desire to win. Mm-hmm. You see what I mean? And now everyone will say, I want to win too. Nobody wants to play for a loser team. But there is levels of that desire to win. And so you have to figure out what have they done in the past that made them, competitors and made them winners. You can use rubrics such as have they been in a competitive sport, or I was just talking to my handler and she did something personally. It was incredibly hard for a year. And I was like, that's a desire to win. That's hard. So finding that is super hard. Most people say they want it, but very few people have it. So
actually working for it. And
exactly, working for it, and the discipline and the waking up early or doing whatever it takes is incredibly hard. Startups are way too glorified. Yeah. And nobody speaks about the actual work. And when you see these tweets about 996, that's fucking adorable. Like nobody works 996. Everybody's like 12, 12, 24. Like, you know what I mean? Like there's none of that in real life. So nobody speaks about the sacrifices, like the family you don't see, the friends that you can call back. Like there's all the sacrifices. So to find people that fit that mold is incredibly hard. So like we're almost like, I was joking with Raj. Like whenever we find somebody exceptional, we'll talk to them. You see what I mean? And if there is something special about them, we'll bring them in and figure it out.
Yeah. I guess that's a great segue to talk about why the heck are you doing that again? I mean, you're very competitive. I'm not going to ask you why you didn't buy a yacht in Miami and went to chill there, because it's clear you're going to build something again.
Yeah.
But what was that moment when you felt like, oh, I want to go again? And what was the spark that lightened for you for paid? And please be honest, like, was your wife okay with that too?
Yeah, my wife hated it. My wife was super pissed. And my kids were making fun of me. He's like, oh, Dad cannot stop being CEO. So what happened was that at Outreach, we were shipping agents. And every SaaS company has this problem. Tim didn't talk about it, but every SaaS company has this problem. Every SaaS company has seat compression, meaning companies are laying off employees. And then every procurement cycle, so like your contract could be 2, 3, 4 years, right? But every procurement cycle, they will look at the bottom 10% of adoption and they just cut that off, right? So you have the bottom 10% is gone, you don't have top line growth. So what do people do is that they add products to the seat to make the seat more expensive. But guess what procurement does? Procurement says, hey, you want to keep the contract size? You pay me the same. So there's no growth. You see what I mean? So everybody's stuck on this low growth mode. So when we were shipping agents, the initial thing was like, yeah, attach it to a seat. And ServiceNow did that, Salesforce did that, everybody did that. But you didn't get paid for the agents. And now the agents are consuming all these tokens, right? So like if you have a prospecting agent or an AI SDR agent and you have a relationship with somebody that lasted 5 years, that input prompt to like describe your relationship for the past 5 years will cost you like $5. You see what I mean? So like now you have a $5 email going out, right? And you're not getting paid for that. So this problem bugged me because I had Zuora and Salesforce Billing and NetSuite and all these things that they were holding me back from actually making money making agents. And like we were shipping agents faster than IT could improve the systems to actually monetize them. So I just thought, like, just like everybody else, like I'm very bothered by unfairness, and this felt unfair that I'm paying Zuora all this fucking money and I'm getting held back. So. At that point, I moved to London. I'm walking around yelling at pigeons because I'm mad about this, and like, trying to forget that I was the CEO of Outreach and trying to move on with my life. But this problem wouldn't leave me. So my wife tells me to go in and spend time with a friend in Spain so that I can clear my head. So I went, and the moment I landed the day after was the OpenAI Strawberry release. Does everybody remember what the OpenAI Strawberry release was? That was 01. That was the moment that reasoning was introduced to LLMs. And when I played with it and when I read it, I'm like, oh my God, everything will change now. Now agents can think. Now you can send an agent on a discovery journey or a tool calling journey, and they will come back with the results. So now you have a true replacement for human tasks. You see what I mean? So now the monetization moment became, a real emergency for everyone. And that's when I realized that if I didn't jump back into this moment of technology change, I was gonna regret it my whole life. So that's when I decided I gotta build something here.
And you've been at it now for a year, right? So
no, actually, we've been at it for February.
Almost. Yeah.
No, 10 months.
10 months. It's wild, yeah. I guess if we look a little bit at your journey, right, and we at Lightspeed, we've invested more than $2.5 billion in the last 2 years in kind of the AI transformation, all the way from the bottom, companies like Mistral, Anthropic that are building the infrastructure layer, then to the picks and shovels where you're in the application layer. And then if I look at the application layer, the conversation that I have with founders almost 3 times a day is like, how the hell am I gonna price this?
Yeah.
And the core problem is like, if my customer doesn't even understand what value this brings, I have no clue how I'm gonna price this.
Right.
How should companies think about that? And I think you've developed a bit of a framework there.
Yeah.
Walk us through that.
Yeah. So the way to think about how you extract value in an agent, it begins by understanding your own margin consumption. So it needs to be north of that. Yeah. And then it needs to be south of an efficient frontier. And this efficient frontier is defined by 2 things. autonomy and attribution. So when you have high autonomy agents and high attributable events that the agents are driving, such as customer success, or a mortgage security issue, like an agent that is working on mortgages, or bad debt recovered. You see, I mean, those are events that are truly monetizable, and they're truly attributable, and they're mostly run autonomously. So when you're in that sort of like, land of milk and honey on the upper right-hand quadrant, then the most efficient way to capture revenue is to charge by outcome, because the outcome is fully attributable to the agent. Now, most agents are not highly attributable, meaning they do a bunch of work that are sort of like tasks of workflows that are in between outcomes. And at that point, then you have to think about how do you charge for the task that is being performed. So there's a few ways to do it. One of them is to think about how long would it take the same human to perform a task. Also, you can see in the value chain how much is that task worth. At the end of the day, this framework is a way for you to negotiate with your buyer.
Yeah.
Like what are they willing to pay? And the part where I'm trying to convince the world, and I'm early but I'm making good progress, is that when you have a standard unified pricing that is easy for the reps to consume, you're actually leaving a lot of money on the table. You see what I mean? If you look at the highest, in any organization, the highest performing reps, they know how to find the biggest pools of value, and they're usually being held back by deal desk and by your SKUs and by all this other nonsense that people put into like harmonized pricing. So the best way to do it is for your largest contracts, let your reps go find like the pools of value. So like we're working with companies that are replacing, say, BPOs. Right? Yeah. So instead of like saying, hey, pay me per seat or pay me per task, they say, how much is a BPO contract worth? Oh, 5 million. Give me $1 million of that, and I'll replace the whole thing. You see what I mean? So all of a sudden, you're not putting yourself in the budget for tools. You're in the BPO budget. Yeah. The other way to do it is to go against open headcount. You know what I mean? Like how many open headcounts do you have for the engineers? 10. How many of those have you filled in last year? None. Perfect. Yeah. Give me 2 of those. You know what I mean? That's $400,000 worth of value.
Yeah, and I guess that's what this transformation is about. It's not anymore about the tooling budget, as you said, but it's the 70% of what's the global GDP, and that's the human labor.
100%.
Right?
And like the moment every negotiation begins with a point of reference. So if your point of reference is the headcount budget, you're already winning. You see what I mean? Like you're already in a much larger budget, and whatever you do is going to look a lot better than if you go against the IT budget and you're pegged into some between CRM and whatever the hell is there. Like, no, you don't want to live there. That's a horrible place to live. You want to live in the headcount budget.
I guess the easy counter argument against this is like, once you've done that reduction in headcount and you've done that savings, isn't the problem then in year 2 that you're again in the tooling budget and you're again in that vicious cycle of like being priced down?
Absolutely. So eventually, the headcount budget gets you a price to play. But let's just see what you just did. By being in the headcount budget, you just charge probably 10x what you would have charged by being in the tools budget. So your reference point of beginning is much higher to where you started. You see what I mean? So even if you stay flat, you see what I mean? You're much better off. Now, your reference point going forward is going to be what you did in the past, right? So as long as you can reference against yourself and do better, which is in complete your control, you're going to be in good shape. Yeah. And that's sort of like the momentum going forward.
So I guess the first learning for kind of founders that are building agents is like, ideally you find something that's highly attributable and highly autonomous. Correct. And then you have a great way of kind of already anchoring it, starting it.
Correct.
And then you said another thing early on, and that was, margins. And, we investors, we love the SaaS world, highly recurring revenue, 80% margins, quickly scaling, even with inefficiencies in the business, but it's a great business model.
Right.
That's obviously gonna change, right? So, because you have like much more cogs in the business. Right. So how should founders think about that?
So, I think founders should throw away the SaaS playbook, and it's almost, I beg you to throw away the SaaS playbook. It will not work for you. Like burn it, throw it away. It doesn't work. In the SaaS playbook, you start with 80% margins that are relatively fixed. Yeah. And then if you're growing fast, your sales and marketing spend is going to be between 20 and 30%. If you're building a lot of product, your R&D spend is going to be somewhere between 20 and 25%. And then, because you love people, you're going to have 10%, G&A spend. That whole equation results in about 10% margin. So if you're growing at 30%, you're good to go. You're rule of 40, you're packaged and good to go. When you begin at 40% margin, none of this other shit works. You see what I mean? So now you're beholden to grow at 60% at minimum just to stay in the box. You see what I mean? And that is so hard to do at scale. Like everyone is just starting to hit, 50, 100 million. And like, I love it all, but like it's about to get hard. You know what I mean? Yeah. Like for most people who are, grew very excitedly very quickly, they haven't put in the hard mile. So like it's really hard to continue this level of growth at at 100 million. Like Ramp and things like that are exceptions. You know what I mean? The majority of the rest of the companies don't do that.
The real durable business are getting seldom. Real modes are getting seldom.
100%.
That all is there. So pricing plays an even more important role in how you extract the value.
100%. And like the problem, and the reason I'm so passionate about this is that, look, if you build an agentic business that has 40% margins and it's delivering real value, doesn't need to grow at 100% or 40%. You have a very reasonably good business growing at 30% or 40%. And that's a good business. You see what I mean? Like that's a scalable business that has moats, and you can IPO it, you can sell it, you can, private equity. Like there's many ways to monetize that. So you don't have to throw it away, is what I'm trying to say. You see what I mean? So like just live in that 40% margin box because it's not going away.
I guess I would frame it even differently. It's like once you found that box, you can hopefully accelerate even beyond it, and then you can still be a venture backer.
100%.
But at least you're default alive.
100%. Exactly.
Yeah. Maybe taking us back for the last 3 minutes to kind of doing this all over again as a repeat founder. I don't know if you've seen the statistics, but at YC, the average age used to be 30.
Yeah.
Now in the last batch, it's actually 24.
Yeah.
And you could argue that agentic world is now a massive advantage to be early, young, naive. Mm-hmm. A little bit similar like in the mobile internet age where, people like Evan Spiegel at Snap, Mark Zuckerberg at Facebook, who are first-time founders are really the ones that are hitting it home. Is it even an advantage to be a repeat founder like you at the moment?
I don't know. I'm about to find out, but I will tell you. No, but I will tell you that there are so many things that mentally, there's so many things that are advantageous to people that are repeat, so that you don't freak out as much. Yeah. Because you have seen all sorts of shit before, so like you already got that in you. You know how to hire, you know how to scale, or you at least not what not to do. I think that there are some skills that can only be learned through time. Yeah. For instance, sales. Yeah. There is no shortcut to it. You see what I mean? You have to put in the hard miles. You have to go and get 100 no's for that one yes. You have to prospect yourself. And that is just time consuming, right? So there is no vibe coding for sales. No. There is no vibe coding for expansion. That is just hard work. You see what I mean? So if you look at the great majority of agents being built right now, they are all sold, all of them. And that's where experience comes in a little bit, is that I can walk into a room and I can make somebody part with $250,000 without breaking a sweat. It's really hard to do that when you don't have that experience. You see what I mean? This is why you see like all the agentic, small businesses, they're charging very little for their stuff. Yeah. And they're losing money hand and fist because it's being fueled, with borrowed money, but eventually they have to grow up.
They don't have the confidence to sell at a higher price.
100%. So hopefully they'll staff it well and they will bring experienced people and they'll balance it out with youth and experience. But yeah, so like there's some things that they need a little bit of aging to perform well.
I guess the other thing of that equation is like, it's not a time for playbooks, right? So when I see what you're doing now at Paid very impressively is like, you're obviously applying your experience, but then you're ripping out all of your playbooks and you're ripping them apart on how you're building teams, on how you're reinventing kind of the sales function or reinventing even the FDE function, which everyone thinks it's at the frontier. So I guess it's also a time where playbooks don't matter so much and first principles thinking and
100%.
is 100%.
So back to your question of why am I doing this? Because this is fun. Like you see what I mean? Like I'm finally in a position in my life where I can apply what I learn. I get to choose my partners, like who I go to battle with. I don't have to go beg for money anymore. And so we can build a good, solid team with good, solid operations based on good, solid principles. So when we were building Outreach, we have to sell to eat. You see what I mean? Like, I don't know if anybody knows this, but my first 5 salespeople were commission only.
That's wild.
Has anybody sold commission only? That commission only means that you have no salary. In Europe, that must be illegal for all I know. But like in the US, it's very common. So like if you didn't kill, you didn't eat. So here, I get to take a breather. I'm gonna say, look, I get to have an opinion. We will have high ACV.
Yeah.
Will that slow down the sales cycle? Yes, a little bit. But the quality of revenue is much higher.
I love that. I love that. That makes us end on a high note. I see the timer is up.
Oh.
Manny, we could have done this way longer and have another shot, but then we would have for sure been kicked off the stage. So
That's right.
thank you for taking the time. I hope this was a lesson for repeat founders and also what to do now in this agentic world. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you all.
Have a good time.
Bring this back into the next speaker.